Hello, this is Joey, and this is Game of Channels, and I just want to do a quick reading wrap-up for the books I read in the month of October. So the first book that I finished in the month of October is The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis, and I listened to this on audiobook. This was a reread for me. This is about the fourth or fifth time that I've read that book, but the first time in several years, and so here recently I decided I'd kind of like to go back and listen to all of the Chronicles of Narnia through audiobook, so I started with Magician's Nephew, which is the first one chronologically. And I really enjoyed the audiobook. It was Kenneth Branagh did the narration, and this book was published in 1955 by C.S. Lewis. And I would have said before reading it that The Magician's Nephew probably was my least favorite of the 7 Chronicles of Narnia. But I really enjoyed, but I still like it, and I really enjoyed listening to it. And the thing that struck me about the story going through it this time was that I'd forgotten was just the humor in the story. I love the Uncle Andrew character, who is kind of this, he's the magician. He's kind of this bumbling magician who, I love his interaction with this evil queen who gets accidentally brought into our world from another world in this book. And so anyhow, his interaction with her as he at one point becomes convinced that she has fallen in love with him, and it just, my son and I were listening to it and we were both laughing out loud. So Magician's Nephew, I really I enjoyed that book, and look forward to kind of working my way back through the Chronicles of Narnia, which is one of my favorites. Another audiobook I finished in October was Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier, published in 1936. And I loved that book. The reason I read it was I'm kind of trying to work my way through some of the novels and plays that were stories that were later made into films by Alfred Hitchcock. And so Jamaica Inn is a Hitchcock film that I watched about probably 23 years ago, and so I really didn't even remember what the story was about. But last year I read Rebecca, which is another Hitchcock film and Daphne du Maurier novel. So I read that last year, and I really liked the novel, so I look forward to reading another du Maurier novel. I would say I think I actually enjoyed Jamaica Inn even more than I enjoyed Rebecca. I gave them both 5-star reviews, but I think I enjoyed it more because when I read Rebecca, it's a great novel, but I had seen the movie so many times that I really wasn't surprised by anything that took place in the novel. And if you had read that novel back, when it was first published, there are some twists and turns in the story, but because I was so familiar with the film, it didn't have that effect for me, even though I loved reading it. With Jamaica Inn, it had been long enough that I really didn't remember what the story was about. So I really liked Jamaica Inn, and I felt like it had, as I was reading it, I kind of felt like it had a Wuthering Heights type feel to it. Although, in the sense, Jamaica Inn is about this woman who goes to live with her uncle who runs this inn, and her uncle is kind of a brute, and he's the husband of her aunt, who is kind of put upon by the uncle. So there's this brute of an uncle who runs this place. There's the dysfunctional relationship. There's another brother who comes into the story. So in that sense, it reminded me of Wuthering Heights, and kind of this, she shows up at this dysfunctional situation going on here, and then it takes off from there. Now, I will say, from what I see on book 2, people either love Wuthering Heights or hate it. If you hate Wuthering Heights, I still think you'd enjoy Jamaica Inn, because while it has a Wuthering Heights feel, the story doesn't progress in the same way Wuthering Heights does. And if you love Wuthering Heights, I think you'd also really enjoy Jamaica Inn. So, and I know Daphne du Maurier, when she wrote Rebecca, I think that she was that story was written as kind of with similarities and almost a tribute to Jane Eyre. So I kind of wonder if she wrote Jamaica Inn along the same lines with the idea of making this a Wuthering Heights type story. I don't know, but that was my takeaway from it. But anyhow, Jamaica Inn I thought was a great story and a great book, and I think it's Gothic, and I think people who like those Victorian Gothic novels would also enjoy Jamaica Inn. The third book that I read last month was Heaven to Betsy, which is published in 1945 by Hart Lovelace. And it's part of the Betsy Tacy series. It's a children's classic. There's a Betsy Tacy read-along going on BookTube, which I'm a little behind because I just joined BookTube, but that is how I heard about these books, so I kind of started reading through them, and I'm now to, I think that's book 5, I believe, which follows Betsy as she is starting high school as a freshman. And so a couple things, I really liked that book as well. A couple things that take place in the book. She's kind of becoming more of an individual person and less of a kid. She's a freshman in high school. She's becoming interested in boys. She and her friends are going to parties. She's interacting with new people that she hasn't, not just Tacy, who is her childhood friend, but now some others. And another thing that's interesting about the story is kind of this desire of Betsy and her sister, who have been singing in the Episcopal choir, even though their family is Baptist, and they are both have a desire to actually join the Episcopal Church, but there's a hesitation to talk about that to their father. So that's kind of an interesting subplot in the story, but I thought it was well done and an enjoyable book. And then the last thing that I read in October, although I'm not quite finished, is I've just been reading through the book of Isaiah in the English Standard Version of the Bible, and really enjoying reading Isaiah. And a couple things striking me there is how much, as I read the book of Isaiah, how many passages in there I recognize from the New Testament, and that the New Testament quotes Isaiah quite a bit in the Gospels and the other books. And second thing is just kind of the poetic language of Isaiah, that it's just very beautiful writing, and some of the, well, it's very poetic writing, and I love Isaiah 53 and kind of the 53 through 55. Those chapters there, I'm really enjoying, and kind of the picture of Jesus in Isaiah 53. Just very good. So anyhow, that's what I read in October, and so all 3 of the books, and then also the book of Isaiah, all 4 were excellent reads for me. And so thanks for watching.